Hey, baby. Welcome to the sexiest month at Film Seizure.
Hey, whoa, wait a minute, Chuck. Wait a minute,
Sexy.
Chuck.
What's up?
I know you're new-ish to being a regular here, but we don't do Sexy September anymore. At least not this year.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, 2020 is all fucked up, so we're scrapping Sexy September.
Yeah,
Oh,
this shit is
man.
not sexy anymore.
Shit.
But you know what it is? It is super.
It is.
It's gonna be a super September. We're willing it into existence. And with that means we are going to cover in this month of September Superman 1, 2, 3, 4, and Returns. That's right.
The good Superman movies.
We've supersized September. 5 weeks of Superman.
That's still kind of
Ready
sexy.
for this?
Yeah, I mean,
It's a little sexy.
it's a little sexy. I mean,
Gene Hackman is.
this is gonna
Yeah.
go with Margot Kidder is all right, but
Gene Hackman's a pretty good-looking guy. He's pretty sexy.
especially when he's bald.
So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Welcome to
Jason
Film
Oliver.
Seizure.
Welcome
I'm
to
Jeff
Film Seizure.
Arbuckle. Oh shit, we're all walking all over each other. Welcome to Film Seizure. As Jason said, I am Jeff Arbuckle. Chuck was getting us started here. We'll we'll kick that over to him. But I just wanted to quickly say this is another one of those quarantine sessions because I don't think anything will ever be normal ever again.
Probably not. What we need is a Superman, the 1978 Richard Donner directed Superman to come and save us all.
I think he needs to fly around the Earth really fast and take us back to before COVID was created in a lab by Chinese scientists and released into the world.
Yeah. Go back
Or-
and stop
or-
those nasty Chinese scientists.
There's a
Yeah,
bunch of Chinese
it's-
scientists.
It's probably Bill Gates money in there too, someplace helping fuel all that.
Yeah, but we jest because we don't believe any of that crap, right?
No, we don't believe dumb things.
Yeah.
But you know what I do believe, though, guys?
What's
I
that?
do believe a man can fly.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's been proven to me in front of a blue screen.
Yep.
It's been proven to me for the past 42 years that dudes can fly, man. Dudes
Basically,
can
our
fly.
whole life, Jeff, pretty much.
Pretty close, yeah. So
Yep.
about that, real quick. So as the story goes, I think this was the very first movie I was ever taken to. I think. I think we went to the drive-in. I think the story goes, I was staying as a baby. We were just all went to the drive-in to watch Superman. And so this is the first movie that I actually was taken to or attended or
You were
something.
there.
I
was
might
there.
I might have been there in utero because this movie came out about 6 months before I was born.
Yeah. So, I mean, and obviously, I mean, it came out in December. I mean, it's possible it was at a theater, but it seems like it was probably a drive-in, and it was probably a later run. Just it's a movie that's playing at one of the screens at a drive-in or something, you know. I mean, this movie probably played for months anyway, so it made a whole boatload of money.
Yep. And Marlon Brando made a whole boatload of money too.
Yeah, we can talk about Marlon Brando and why he's not in Superman 2 in a little bit when we get to that next week. So this is Superman. This is Richard Donner. This basically this was not what put Richard Donner on the map. It's what made him a superstar, though. And it was it was at the early stages. I don't know if you guys know this, but Richard Donner was the first director whose filmography grossed $1 billion.
Oh wow.
Really?
Yeah.
I believe that though. I mean, he had a stupid amount of hits.
Yeah.
The Omen made decent money for a horror film, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was a very, very big hit. I think I think a movie was made for almost nothing in maybe 50 million, I think, at least.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. I mean, then the Lethal Weapon movies. I
Mhm.
mean, that's...
Yep.
Goonies.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, so he's one of those directors that's like, hey, you know, who's the first director whose movies made $1 billion? That's probably not the first person you'd think of.
That's
I think like Spielberg or
Yeah.
you would,
Lucas.
yeah. Interesting.
Where do we want to start with this? Do we want to start with the comic books, or do we want to start with just the movie? Are we just going to talk about Superman the movie?
I think we can mention quickly the comic books and maybe a little bit about that. I'll be honest. This was pretty much my introduction to Superman. Were these movies?
Yeah, and they're a pretty good introduction to the character, because it's very much this movie does a very, very good job of boiling down the essence of what Superman is, as an idea or as a mythical character or something. I mean, I can talk a little bit about the comics. Superman was the very first superhero. His first appearance was Action Comics #1, cover dated June of 1938.
1938, yeah.
I think it's June, which would have meant that it came out April or May, or no, March or April of that year.
Yeah, I think the kid that's reading in the beginning is reading from that first comic, because it says June 1938. And
it's not the actual. I don't think it's the actual comic.
I don't remember that little intro scene
really?
At all. I did not remember that at all.
Oh yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, am I watching the right thing? I wasn't even sure that I was watching the movie.
I'm actually pretty certain that that's not. I think that little opening with that comic book, I think it was made for the movie, because back then, I don't know if Superman actually had like his job at the Daily Planet or anything like that until shortly after it, or after his first appearance. But back then, at least until I think maybe the late 40s or into the 50s, it was the Daily Star, not the Daily Planet.
Right.
So I think they actually probably just hired somebody to put together a quick little, opening for that. That basically would be like a first issue of a comic. But anyway, of course, without Superman, you wouldn't have Batman, Wonder Woman, Captain America, all those. They followed very, very shortly afterwards. Superman was like the biggest worldwide character ever created, probably, at least in the 20th century. And what's funny is that this still comes out at a time that comic books were almost strictly thought of as children's entertainment. Yeah. Even though for 15 years or so, Marvel Comics was appealing to college students and philosophers and sociologists and so on and so forth. So the DC characters have always kind of, at least in my opinion, always had a very black and white, very delineated set of ethics, codes, very mythical, very black and white type of characters. And of course, Superman is about as black and white as you can possibly get, as far as good and bad, or good or bad. But anyway, the DC was not doing very well at the time that this movie came out. DC was huge in the 40s and 50s. The Batman TV series helped DC kind of bounce back against Marvel. The problem was that really wasn't Batman. It was somebody's idea of what they thought comic books come to life would be.
Yeah, sure.
And while you could say, yeah, that's fair for, again, family or children entertainment, a lot of people took a lot of umbrage with that, thinking, well, they're laughing at my hero. Right. It's like it left a lot of sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. I mean, I totally admit I freaking loved the Batman TV show when I was a little kid. It's hard for me to watch now. It's like, wow, this is really stupid. um, so there's that element of who would this have been directed towards, and how can you take this seriously? On top of DC was very tumultuous during the 70s. They tried a lot of different things. They tried to make their comics more expensive, but give you 5 times as much pages of stories for, like, instead of a 15-cent comic, you paid 25 cents and you got 5 times page count. That didn't really work too well, because it's not like kids have 25 cents to spend on one comic as opposed to wanting to spend 25 cents on 2 comics or whatever. They also tried to compete with Marvel by doing what was called the Great, I think it was the Great Explosion, or the Great Expansion, where they were just greenlighting more and more comics, and they were basically doubling and tripling what they were producing. Well, that buckled very quickly, and by the time that this movie came out, they were going through what was called the Great Implosion, which they were canceling all of those things that they had started 2, 3, 4 issues in. They just couldn't sustain it. It was just a bad business model. And Warner had just purchased DC Comics, and they weren't going to have a loss leader. It's not like today where Marvel Comics is more than happy with allowing, or Disney is more than happy allowing Marvel Comics to be a little bit of a loss leader to help fuel other things. So at the time, also, Superman, of course, was a reporter, Clark Kent, mild-mannered reporter from the Daily Planet. Well, during the 70s, to try to modernize the character, they tried a few things, like they depowered him a little bit. They made it so that kryptonite was not a weakness of his anymore. They made Clark Kent a TV news reporter, as opposed to, because they thought, well, newspapers are dying, everybody's watching TV. That was kind of a result of the coverage of the Vietnam War and stuff like that. So there was a lot of flux, and there was a lot of tumult. But there were a lot of really good writers and a lot of really good ideas in the 70s at DC. It just wasn't reaching, it wasn't either reaching the right people or reaching the sales that they wanted, and it was very difficult to keep anything outside of really Batman and Superman and the Justice League from remaining relatively even as far as their sales. But those sales weren't particularly great. So there was still an idea of, let's make this movie. And the Ilya and
Alexander
Salkin had gotten the rights to produce a movie.
Who did they purchase the rights from, and how much did they pay? Do you know? I can't find anything on that.
Let's see here. So Ilya first conceived the idea in late 73, November of 74, after a long, difficult process with DC Comics. The Superman film rights were purchased by Ilya, his father Alexander, and their partners Pierre Spengler. Pierre Spengler is a very interesting character.
So they purchased the film rights from DC.
Because Warner Brothers did not purchase DC, I don't think, until the it would have been after this. So,
but there's no idea. We don't have any idea how much they paid. I wonder. Probably wasn't a bunch.
I don't see anything about it. No, it was. It probably was not that much. But they were big time filmmakers. I mean, they'd made the Three Musketeers movies. Yeah. And so those were successful. Those were directed by, Richard Lester. He's another important character to come into this drama here before too long. But he, so there was no doubt that they could put on a good movie. Now, what's interesting was that they wanted to take this pretty seriously, and they wanted to play this straight. They looked at it as, this was modern myth. This was, it should be taken with seriousness, and it should be made for not just kids, but for adults as well. So that's why they brought in Mario Puzo, who then they were able to bring in, they wanted to bring in people like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas to direct. They both turned it down.
Yeah, a lot of people turned this down. Well, Spielberg didn't turn it down per se. He was just already working on Close
Encounters.
Yeah.
So
because they weren't sure about him. They wanted to see how everything turned out with Jaws. And then by the time they wised up and they tried to get Spielberg, he had moved on. Yeah.
Yeah. So so there were a lot of people that they went through. I mean, William Friedkin.
Yeah.
And Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh, Sam Peckinpah.
Sam Peckinpah at one point. Yeah. So I mean, they were legitimately wanting this to be a for real movie and not just a kids popcorn affair, and so it eventually landed on Richard Donner. And
going back real quick to the Mario Puzo screenplay, which from what I understand wasn't really used at all.
He was more of a story. Like I think he had kind of put together some of the story or some of the
because according to
more
Tom,
ideas.
According to Tom Mankiewicz, he said not one line of anything that Puzo wrote was in the movies, and it was a 550-page screenplay that Puzo wrote, which is like enough for 5 movies.
It's like 2 Godfathers, but no, Tom Mankiewicz. Now he was coming off of working on the Bond series.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote the early 70s movies.
And that seems like a good tone fit too. A Bond kind of appeal. And you kind of get that, I think, a little bit in Superman. You definitely kind of have the zany villain with Lex Luthor, kind of a, very much a supervillain, right? Which every Bond has, every Bond movie has.
Yep. So I want to talk about Lex Luthor here in a minute. I warned you, Jason, we were going to frame this as pre-crisis.
You said you weren't going to start saying that till the second one.
No. I said I would be talking a lot about it in the second one. But Lex Luthor is probably the most representative of that era of the comic book series. Mm-hmm. Of the time. Now, Lex Luthor, most of us in our generation know Lex Luthor to be this evil businessman type.
Right.
Setting at LexCorp and lording over
right.
Metropolis and desperately wanting Metropolis to love him more than Superman. Gee, I wonder who that fucking sounds like. But
but who's our Superman then? Who's our goddamn Superman?
Well, have you not seen the Alex Ross painting of Barack Obama as Superman?
Right.
Anyway,
that's a bit much.
Well, it might be a bit much, but it's the representation of hope.
I hear you.
Yeah. So anyway, Lex Luthor was not around from the very, very beginning of Superman. He was just kind of created at some point in the 40s. In fact, he may have actually, I think he was first in the comics. But anyway, he was this stark raving mad scientist. Probably meant to be a little bit kind of German influenced maybe. But he was just guy in a lab coat, little bald guy in a lab coat with his little test tubes and, and cackling and so on. He would, and that was golden age type of Superman stuff. And once you get into the silver and the bronze age, and this takes place square in the bronze age of comics, he became, just this kind of evil genius more than anything. Like maybe he would do something where he would have some chemical knowledge of something, or he would just have these kind of plots, I mean, and he was just a great scientific mind, or a great ingenious mind. He it was not until after Crisis on Infinite Earths where he became the person that we know him today, and that's how he's been portrayed ever since. And then to a certain extent, even in Superman 4, he's portrayed in that post-crisis way. But this pre-crisis way, that's why he isn't, I mean, he's a criminal mastermind. He's not a businessman who does shady shit on the side. He's not the mad scientist. He's the guy who has an underground layer and pulling the strings from above as kind of a kingpin type of character.
His underground subway lair in Superman is one of my all-time favorite movie sets. Like, that is awesome.
Yeah, he's got a pool. Awesome. He even has a little.
He's got
pool
a fucking pool. Yep, it's so cool, man. It is.
Well,
it's great.
And as he says to Miss Tessmacher, I mean, it's like, they do have a Park Avenue address.
Right. Yep.
So, but anyway, so yeah, I mean, he is not, he was the prevailing idea of what Lex Luthor was in the 70s, which was just this kind of criminal mastermind. And he was every bit as smart as Superman was supposed to be, except for he had an ego. And that's really about the only thing that has ever carried through the entire history, or at least mostly modern history, of Lex Luthor is that genius, and the fact that he can't get past his own ego.
And really, we'll talk about in the next movie, but he really doesn't outsmart Superman in this. Or, I mean, Superman doesn't outsmart Lex Luthor in this. Lex Luthor, it really does establish a superior intellect.
Yes.
You'd almost say that Superman is the victim of his own hubris in this movie.
Yes, but that gets reversed in the second movie.
Right.
Yes. So, yeah, I mean, so there also, this is one of the very first big time instances that there were two movies made simultaneously telling one big story arc. Mm-hmm. And it's it's something that's not very uncommon today. I mean, it seems like almost every big movie franchise now makes things like that. Like the Matrix sequels did it, the Lord of the Rings did it, the Marvel, the last two Avengers movies have done it now. The idea of just keep the production rolling and let the post-production people take care of what they're supposed to take care of while I'm working on the next movie.
Yeah, and I guess didn't the Salkinds do that with the Three Musketeers movies?
Possible, yeah.
I'm pretty sure they did. In fact, I think it created some Screen Actors Guild issues because they basically shot two movies for the price of one as far as what they paid the actors.
Yep,
and there was a bit of a revolt there. Yeah,
there's a bit of a problem with that with Superman too.
Yeah,
they paid Christopher Reeve $250,000 for two full-length, super smash hit movies.
Yeah, he could have made a lot more money on
well, he refused to come back to finish the second movie until they renegotiated that.
There we go.
Margot Kidder tried to get out of it, or tried to throw her weight around by saying you got rid of Richard Donner. But we'll get all to that in the second movie. But you can start to see some of the Salkinds ways of thinking. They were very, very much, I think, penny pinchers, even to the point where they had a movie that they wanted to. They were starting to get really, really pissy about the cost of this movie, and maybe rushed the end of the production of this movie in order to cut those costs. But anyway, this movie 100% has everything that everybody knows about Superman. Planet Krypton's going to blow up. The scientists are saying it's going to blow up, or one scientist in particular says it's going to blow up. The hubris of the entirety of the ruling body of Krypton is like, nope, it's your unfounded fake news.
It's kind of an environmental message too, right? I mean,
yeah.
You've got we're screaming from the rooftops, we're killing ourselves, we're gonna the whole thing's coming down. We got to get out of here. And nobody believes it.
Right. They're too comfortable with just keeping things as they are instead of looking at themselves in the mirror. Jor-El, Marlon Brando, is like, well, we're going to get this kid out of here. And they send their son to Earth, where he is going to have great powers. That's basically the opening of every single Superman story ever. It always begins with those same beats.
Yep.
It doesn't matter what era you're reading from. It's the same. It's, Krypton's doomed, and they send Superman to Earth, where a yellow sun will make his dense molecular makeup do amazing things. There's one thing that's really kind of interesting too, because I think this movie actually serves as a really interesting science fiction movie, to the point where there's a line in this when baby Kal-El is like rocketing towards Earth. There's one of the things that's said to him in the in his little chamber there, where he's getting a little bit of education to start. One thing that says here: each of the 6 galaxies you'll pass through have their own laws of space and time, which I think at that point in time was maybe hinted at through the theory of relativity.
Interesting.
But I think it's pretty well accepted as a general idea of physics now, that your proximity to certain things, or your certain locales in various space or various solar system situations may change how you view time, how time moves, and how matter works.
That whole monologue from Brando there is it really does set up the mythology, and it's incredibly biblical. Like even to the point where he's talking about giving Earth his only son. It's like, holy shit. That's on the nose.
Well, okay, so let's talk about who created Superman. 2 poor Jewish kids from Cleveland. So you have Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, and they basically kind of gave a Moses background, right? You send the baby down the river to lead the people, later.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This was the first, I think, time where there really is, the Moses stuff is there, but let's really, really amp up the Christ.
The Savior,
angle.
Yeah, for sure.
Because when do you see Superman? You see him as a baby, then at 18, and then again in his 30s.
Yep.
Just, so it's basically, it's an adapted idea, but really, if you think about it, that's probably not much unlike the Moses story anyway.
Not really. I mean, that's the Christ story isn't exactly new either. It's all goes back to ancient mythology.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the hero's journey, in a way. But Siegel and Schuster, they're kind of a sad story. They created the greatest comic book character of all time, right? And after working for DC on the character for like 10 years, they left, but they had to fight really hard to get a byline. That just wasn't done in comics back then.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, most people didn't even want to put their real names inside the comics as far as who wrote and did the art for them. And so they eventually were kind of able to get a byline, I think, but the problem was that they were getting no royalties for it. They fought for years, particularly in the 60s and 70s, because, they were, you didn't get paid much to make comics back then. And they're creating something that DC had made just hundreds of millions of dollars off of, and they were getting none of it. And so by the time that this movie came out, they finally got royalties and that, and permanent byline. Like if Superman's ever used anywhere, it's got to say that Superman was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. And there's a really nice story about how they, like being there with them at the premiere of the movie and actually seeing their names on the big screen and how they reacted to it. That's really kind of sweet. But
did that have much of a financial impact for them?
Yeah, they received a permanent stipend from DC. It was, it wasn't huge, but it was pretty good for the rest of their lives to have some money. But Joe Shuster, by the early 90s, had like huge debt, and he died owing a lot of money. And just before you think the DC did anything good about this, they said to his family, "We'll pay his debts, but you can never challenge us for those rights of who owns the character ever again."
Oh, damn.
So they were caught in they were kind of caught in the fuck barrel there.
That
it's
sucks.
like either we got to pay the debt and continue to fight expensive legal battles for the and that is, there have been continued fights over, and that's kind of why Supergirl and Superboy had to be kind of wiped out at one point too, because it's like, well, we can keep Superman, but we can't have these other characters, because then we would have to say that everything they did was valid, and that, because we didn't really buy those characters from them. We just bought the idea of Superman from them. And eventually it all got settled. But it is, so it's kind of there were a lot of shitty deals for artists and writers back then, but anyway.
So the movie, right? Like you said, it's a lot of pretty much what everybody knows about Superman is in this movie. An entire generation of people were introduced to Superman with this movie. Certainly myself, and I think both of you guys. The music, I think, is so importantly iconic as well. I don't think that would ever be in doubt, but it's John Williams is a fascinating composer in many ways, but he can take a theme and make variations of that theme and make it just instantly recognizable, right? Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and Superman, those three themes are not really all of that divergent from one another, but yet you hear them and they are uniquely reminiscent of what they represent.
It's so much to the point where it's a big freaking deal that they used some of the theme in like the Justice League movie, and they did the same thing with Danny Elfman's Batman, and they borrowed some of that, which of course,
I don't feel like you could even really have a Superman movie without the Williams music to some degree.
They try.
They did, but it just doesn't work.
No. This is, to me, by far and away, John Williams' best score.
The Planet Krypton music,
I love that theme.
Is my absolute favorite theme in this movie, and one of my favorite themes of all fucking time. It is beautiful. It's just, every time I hear it, it gives me chills.
Yeah, the theme itself, still, it makes me kind of, it kind of makes you want to sit up straight and puff out your chest a little bit. It's very emotional. Like, there are things in this movie that are still really emotional, but and a lot of that has to do with music. And it's a very manipulative score in all the right ways that a movie score should be.
I would be very curious to know what the Goldsmith score would have sounded like had he been able to score it, but only out of a curiosity. I would never in a million years want to replace the Williams score, because I agree with you. I think it is also his best score. It's the themes. There's so many great themes. Even the Lois Lane love theme, which is a little corny, is still really, really beautiful.
We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Hey, Chuck, let's bring Chuck in. Chuck, what do you have to say?
I was waiting for the sexy talk. I guess we're.
No. Superman fucks Lois Lane in part 2.
That's next,
Oh man,
Yeah,
I can't wait to talk about that scene because
Yeah, the Fortress of Bangitude. That's a good scene. No,
boy.
yeah, I mean, you guys have covered a lot of the same thoughts I have about this movie. My introduction to Superman, for sure. I was a huge fan of these two movies as a child. So much so that, I know they're presented as two different movies, but written as one. I totally mix them up in my mind all the time because I used to watch them both,
Yeah.
back to back a lot when I was younger. I also love the John Williams score. I will admit, though, that I still will get confused at the beginning of some of his themes as to which movie it pertains to. Like, oh, it's a Star Wars. Nope, that's Superman. Nope, that's because they are so damn similar.
Yeah, that's not totally uncommon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, every composer kind of has their own motif,
Right. Yes, definitely, and John Williams definitely has that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, his structure. His themes are all kind of structured in the same way.
But he uses horns very similarly.
And generally, in this, I don't know how to talk about music very well. I'm not a music. I don't know music. I love music.
You were about to say you weren't a music guy, and I was like, "Fuck you!"
I love music. I don't know. I'm not a musician, so I don't know how to read music. I don't really recognize different keys as and identify as they are. But when you hear, Williams's major themes, they all seem to be structured and sound similar in the same keys.
I think they are a lot in the same keys.
But yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Chuck.
No, that's fine. This movie and two in particular, I'm going to consider them one film a lot when I talk about them. Superman 1 and 2 were definitely my favorite superhero movies. Probably until The Dark Knight. I think I mentioned this to you guys outside of the pod, but there were so many great superhero films after, but these two were the standard.
And these are gold standard movies. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And a lot of it holds up. Yeah. I mean, there's some goofiness in it, some stuff I disliked at times, but overall I'm like, this is just a great story.
What's interesting, it is a great story, but it's a different type of superhero movie. You wouldn't be able to make this type of superhero movie now because it's not action packed. There are things that happen, but it takes its time. Yeah, it's very it's obviously it's an origin story, which that to me sort of gets a little old for me. I don't really want to watch the origin of Superman again when I watch this movie, but again, the music, the themes, and all the Krypton stuff is so cool. I think it's still one of the coolest representations of the planet Krypton I've ever seen. So that kind of keeps me in it.
But you don't like the flying dildos off to.
And for a 2.5 hour movie, it's really surprisingly brisk.
Yeah. It is, but could you imagine this one of the reasons this couldn't happen now, but could you imagine the giddy people in their seats when this movie came out waiting an hour and 10 minutes basically for Superman to do anything?
Well, I mean,
he has a flying scene.
But you get
earlier.
Sprinkles of things. You get him as a teenager and him running like the Roadrunner, and trying to chase a train and all that.
You'd have to show Superman first.
This is a product of its time, though, too. I mean, like in 1978, every other week there was a 2.5 hour or 3 hour movie being released.
Yeah.
It's and not for the same reasons why they're released today. This movie is. This movie is definitely a product of its time, and people. I think people, and certainly I think our generation maybe appreciates that setup a little bit better than the people who came after us. Like, Chuck, I don't know did you watch this with your kids at all, or did you?
No, they actually weren't even interested, which surprised me. Mm-hmm. I tried to get them to sit down and watch it, but after watching it myself, I feel like they would have been like, this is boring after 45 minutes. I don't know that for a fact. It's just the way I think media is consumed, especially by our kids or the younger generations, is way different, obviously, than we did it.
Yeah, I think the special effects have really shown their age too, and it almost feels campier now,
Right.
because of that. Some of the model effects don't look as great.
Well,
I still think Star Wars looks better untouched.
I agree.
Well, yeah, but
Absolutely.
I would say that there are things about this movie that the way that they're shot, like the miniatures in this movie are phenomenal. Like when Krypton's blowing up in the background while the little baby pod is flying away. And that's all miniature work, and it looks pretty good.
It does, but it also looks a little bit too recognizable as miniature work today.
Today, I guess.
I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, that's pretty good looking model, right? I'm not. I'm not able to suspend as much disbelief as I would have when I saw this as a kid.
Sure, but I also think that there is also a very, very specific hazy look to this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right up until the moment that then Superman arrives in Metropolis, then it changes its look.
Yeah, I always liked that too, because you're right. It's sort of shot like The Godfather, right?
Yeah.
Until it goes to Metropolis, and everything is a lot crisper, a lot brighter.
Well, it looks like a comic book at that point.
And obviously, it's the comic book, but it's also the present day, right?
Right.
Everything that's happening up until that point is in the past.
Right, it's the hazy memory of the soft focus of the past. So like when the Fortress of Solitude gets created, I always like the darkness of that, because it almost seems scary, because you don't know what this thing that is telling you to do things is doing. Like all you have is just the psychic call to take this thing and throw it. Yeah, and it's like, what's it doing? You're like, and there's a darkness to that I always appreciate. Mm-hmm. Although, obviously, if they special edition the fuck out of this, that would be done in probably in the daytime or something. It wouldn't look right. It wouldn't, or at least wouldn't look right to me. Mm-hmm. They can make it look better, but I don't know if it would make it look right.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's starting to show its age. It's definitely showing its age, I should say.
Well, yeah, and there are there are two still outstanding effects in this movie. One being just the simple fact that they figured out how to make somebody realistically look like they're flying. Now, granted, there's a lot of that rear projection and that front projection stuff.
Mostly front projection, yeah.
But, and they do clean that up in the second one, where they use different film stock. They use, I think, 70 millimeter instead of 35. So that's why it looks kind of grainy in the first one. But, that's really a guy being lifted up into the, like in Christopher Reeve was like 200 feet off the ground without a stunt person. That's phenomenal. They wouldn't even take a second to even think about doing that today. It would instantly be CGI. But Christopher Reeve himself is the special effect. He looks like he's really doing these things.
Well, Christopher Reeve, in my opinion, makes this fucking movie.
Oh yeah.
His performance is just perfect. It's perfect.
He has some wonderful body work. Just the way he changes.
When he's acting as Superman and acting as Clark Kent, those two
different people.
Two totally different performances, two totally different people, and he nails both of them.
This is a little later in the film, but when after he flies around with Lois and he goes into the apartment again as Clark Kent, and she walks away to get change, and he's in his Clark Kent posture, and he takes off. Yeah, he takes off his glasses. The way he straightens up is just like, oh my God.
That's Superman. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. You don't need to change the way he combs his hair. You already see he's Superman. And then the moment that he, slinks back down, oh, he's Clark Kent. It's like you get why people can't see them for being the same person almost.
I tell you this, this maybe isn't the popular opinion, but I enjoy watching the scenes of him as Clark Kent far more than I do the scenes of him as Superman. I just think he's so interesting in the choices he makes and the little physical comedy bits he does. It's just delightful. And that is the part of this movie that will never fucking age. That performance, it is just perfection.
Well, it's what I was telling you guys. That first scene that he gets to the Daily Planet, and he's talking to Perry White, and Lois, like a fucking tornado, comes flying in, and she's just in her own little world, and he's just like, oh gee golly, or whatever, and then he's trying to open that bottle, and she smacks it on the table just because she is a blunt instrument. And he then gets it sprayed all over him, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to shake it up." And he's like, "Well, of course you didn't. Why would you make a complete stranger look like a fool?" And the way she reacts to that fucking kills me. It's like that nervous little smile, like, "Oh shit, he just," it's like, I am kind of that way.
Yeah, right.
That she can't see beyond her own end goals, basically. But he's still so very innocent too. I mean, like, that's really him. That's really why, like, he really can't understand why somebody would make somebody look bad.
Maybe it's a little bit sly, right?
Well, maybe it's putting her in their place too.
It's a little bit like he's playing innocent,
right?
But he's also being a little sarcastic. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he had 12 years of education about the human
condition.
Element. Yeah. So I think he knows a lot more than he lets on.
He's playing a little bit dumb. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And I do also Jackie Cooper as Perry White. I don't want anybody else to ever be Perry. It's kind of like J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. Yeah. You can't see anybody else playing that. And just the way that he just so flippantly everything he says is super important or means something later. Like, there's a part in the second movie where it's like he is telling you exactly the situation he's going to be in about an hour and a half. But he's just saying it. He's just, like, he's pontificating without even making a point to. And it just, like, the whole thing, it's like, I love the line. It's like, and he's about the fastest typewriter, or the fastest typist I've ever seen.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
I love too when he says he's just walking around and he looks at Lois's paper and he's like, "Rapist only has one P."
Right. It's like he's already read the whole thing by just glancing at it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, just everything, the hustle and bustle of what's going on around the, like everything that was so quiet and slow moving and peaceful on the farm, and how every single inch of the frame in every scene in Metropolis is just moving. Everything is just moving.
It shows you how fast the big city is, and how he might be a little bit out of his depth as Clark Kent.
Right. And like, just and it opens up, and you see it all through the lens of Jimmy Olsen, who I always feel like poor Jimmy Olsen doesn't quite get enough to do in these movies. Like,
no, he doesn't.
But we're seeing the world through his eyes, and he's really the real innocent person, because, like you said, Chuck, like, Superman already knows everything he needs to know. He's just kind of playing dumb at this point to kind of throw off who he really is. But Jimmy Olsen is the one who's kind of experiencing the world as this innocent. And it's unfortunate that you don't quite get to see enough of him in these movies, but you're given that intro into the Daily Planet through the lens of his camera.
Yep. And he's a much better speller than Lois, which cracks me up.
Oh yeah, it's like she always has to ask him. It's like all the friggin' macabre words.
Yep.
But so real quick, though, I do want to back up to the. So, like, right before the Daily Planet, where he's getting his lessons from his pops, from his real pops, and they are he's telling him all about he's giving him all the deets on science and on the heart and, what his powers are. I like that that it's all done kind of like on the astral plane. Like they even talk about like, you're basically leaving your body and we're going to go on this journey. And it's such a 70s feel to it. Like, it's like a psychedelic, like kind of way of experiencing things, I guess.
Well, It's also a really clever way of getting around the fact that Marlon Brando is an absolute ridiculous person to direct on set.
Yeah.
And it had to read all of his lines from a cue card.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, of course he does, because he for most of his life he wouldn't do anything that that directors would want him to do.
I think I read where he originally wanted Jor-El to be a bagel.
Yes.
What? A bagel.
Yes.
A bagel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like in with
the man was certifiably insane. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was also in Island of Dr. Moreau. He wanted to have a blowhole under his hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolute insane person.
But he does get to say one of my favorite lines in any movie ever, or favorite monologues in any movie ever, where where he's talking about how that they're great people, and that basically saying that humans really only lack the light to show them the way, and that's why he sent us him, and that's when you get to see him as Superman. You don't get to see Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent first, which I think is really, really smart. You get that payoff of, we're releasing Superman into the world now, and he's gonna fucking fly at the camera and make it really look like he's flying at the camera.
It's interesting to me, though, that they did pay Brando what they paid him. I mean,
well, I think they needed him to be the anchor to prove to everybody they're actually serious about this shit.
Maybe. I mean, they paid him $3.7 million and 11% of the gross. I don't know if it was the gross or the net, but they paid him a shit ton of money.
That's an astronomical amount.
Yeah, it's I mean, of course, they didn't know what 11% was going to be, but it ended up being a fucking lot.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah.
It's crazy. That's a crazy amount of money.
Well, it also opened the door that 10 years later, Jack Nicholson asked for the same basic deal.
Yeah.
For Batman.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, and now, well, look at the Marvel actors. They all get especially Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
He doesn't ever have to lift his finger ever again if he doesn't want to.
He probably shouldn't have for that Doolittle movie.
I don't think he lifted anything for that dude.
Also, there is something. Well, I guess we'll save it for next week, actually, because it does more for Superman 2 than.
I really like the scene when Superman introduces himself to the world, when he rescues Lois Lane, and then he goes on his saving everybody.
I wrote them all. I wrote them all down. What he did that first night.
Well, yeah, I the reactions that people have. My absolute favorite reaction is the one of the airline pilot.
Yeah, just fly.
Don't look. Just fly.
Just fly.
So that night he saves Lois. He also has love the little nod to he wants to get into the phone booth, but there is no phone booth.
Yeah.
It's a good little joke.
Yeah. And the fucking pimp. The guy oh my God. When
I told Susan it's one of my favorite lines and deliveries of all time.
Well, and again, it's Christopher Reeve nailing the response too. Where it's like he doesn't give that guy a second. I mean, it's like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'll be, one moment, and then he just takes off. That's it. It's, but yeah, that's that's
a bad outfit. It's so great. It's so great.
But then, okay, so he saves Lois. Then he goes and stops the cat burglar on the side of the building, where he gets a little playful with that guy, where he even gives him a little bit of shade as he's flying down past him.
Oh yeah, this is actually this is the second time he's saved Lois as well. He'd already saved her in the alley.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, he caught the bullet.
He saves her life 4 times in this movie.
Well, she constantly gets herself into trouble.
well, the point I made to Susan was like, how the fuck did Lois Lane make it this far in life? if just in this movie alone, she had to have her life saved 4 times by Superman.
So then there's the shootout at the pier where he just kind of hangs out on the boat and then takes the whole boat to the police station with the guys tied up on it.
I like his little one-liner of bad vibrations.
Yeah.
When he gets in the back of the head.
Oh, I love the cops and the reaction to that. He's like, first bottle's on me.
Because it's the same cop that he dropped the cat burglar off trying to tell his lieutenant. Right. And then the lieutenant's like, go back and finish what you started at the bar.
It's wonderful.
Then he literally saves a cat.
Yes.
Which, can I just say that I appreciate that they left the little 70s thing in the end of that scene and they haven't excised that from the movie yet?
I don't remember what you're talking about.
The girl goes in to tell her mom that the man flew down and saved her cat, and she's like, haven't I told you to stop lying? And then she gets smacked.
Smacks her.
Oh, yeah. Wow, I kind of my brain just didn't see that for some reason.
Yeah. And then he saves Air Force One.
I like that her reaction is the least.
Yeah, she's like,
thanks. Surprised. She's like, thanks, mister.
Yeah, and he's like, all right, see you later. It's like, wow, that was the easiest job I had to do all night. Yeah. And then he saves Air Force One, which was a nice little sandwich there because Lois was on her way to see the president at the airport,
right, when
she got in her accident. Yeah. So at that point, of course, the world knows that there's somebody out there that's wearing big red boots and flying around in a cape. And so, of course, the Daily Planet wants to more or less kind of own the narrative on Superman, and make him synonymous with the planet. And also, meanwhile, we have our Lex Luthor and Otis, Ned Beatty. I fucking love Ned Beatty.
Ned Beatty's great in this, yeah.
And poor guy is both in this and in the next one. Well, in this one in particular, it's like, of course, he's like, the whole joke about 200, my IQ and your weight.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in the next one, he doesn't get saved. He gets removed from the series altogether
because he's
too fat to get onto the hot air balloon.
Yeah. My favorite line of Lex Luthor's about Ned Beatty is, "It's amazing his brain can generate enough power to keep his legs moving."
Yep.
And then you also you have Miss Tessmacher. And so Valerie Perrine, a couple of years from this movie, she's in that Village People movie. That is, can't stop the music.
Oh, I didn't realize that was a Village People movie.
It's their story. They're in it. That movie came out. That movie came out about 18 months after their star had faded.
Wow, that's fascinating. Have you covered that?
No, but I have seen it when I was a little kid, and it's bad. It is really bad.
There's something interesting in this scene too with Lex Luthor that kind of makes a moment in the second movie not make any sense, but how casually he kills that cop who's following Ned Beatty.
Oh yeah. So there are a couple of cops that are trying to basically follow Otis so they can get to Luthor, and they follow him into the subway, and they see him go in through a secret passage. One of the cops tries to, and he gets pushed out into the.
So it tells you what Luthor is really like. He will kill anyone to get what he wants. He doesn't care.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he so much says as much to Superman when he's like, yeah, I don't really care what these bombs do. The end goal is what I'm going for.
Yeah, I just want all this beachfront property.
And Otisburg, he's going to get rid of Otisburg.
Fucking Otisburg kills me. Kills me. I love it so much.
It's like, well, Miss Tessmacher has a place, you know.
It's so funny. But yeah, we'll talk about, I think, more about Luthor in the second movie, Chuck. But he feels a little shoehorned into 2.
Yeah,
in my opinion. But we'll
like Hackman's performance best in 2, but his character.
Oh, he has one moment in particular in 2 that kills me.
But he is essentially one purpose in 2, and it's to keep the plot moving.
Right.
But we'll talk about that later.
So I have a question, and maybe this has to do with his genius, which is not entirely explored in Superman 1. But how the hell does he deduce that kryptonite will hurt Superman? I don't get that leap even a little.
I think, yeah, I agree with you too, because I've always questioned that. It's like, wait, how did he know that? I think he just assumes that if something is because I think.
Well, I think it was the radiation.
He reads the fact that, it's like because I'm from this other place that that's why I have my powers. I think he just makes the leap that anything from that place that's radioactive would hurt him, much the same way as regular radioactive material would hurt regular people.
Right. Yeah, that was my understanding as well.
Fair.
And he knew that it would be irradiated from the red sun of Krypton or wherever.
Well, yeah, just exploding. Yeah. I mean, the way that it exploded, it would be radiated.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it's still, it's a little bit.
I mean, it's, again, this movie does still work pretty well with very comic booky ideas. Like, he would have known from one panel to the next that he's got to go get this kryptonite stuff, and he's already going to know the name of it. It's like there's no reason why they would know that it's called kryptonite.
Every time Superman lets it loose that he can't see through lead, though, I'm like, God damn it, Superman. It's like you can't tell the reporter your weaknesses,
Right.
Yep.
That's good.
He's assuming that the world is good, though. He doesn't know that the world will use things against others.
That seems a bit
naive. Yeah, absolutely.
Given his 12-year history of.
But
also remember the last thing he was told by his dad was that that the people are good.
Right.
They just lack the light to show them their greatness.
But he's already like saved a bunch of people from criminals. He knows that people also are shit.
I think there's a little bit of him saying these things because he's smitten with Lois.
There's that too.
Versus thinking about the larger.
But it's an error, obviously.
It is an error, but I think he does it because he's falling in love.
He really wants to tell her what color her panties are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always like that scene too, because that's very
it's very cheeky. Adult.
Very adult. Very
because she even is starting to do the math about how big his dick is. When she realizes he's 6'3" and 225, you see her like,
oh yeah.
So does everything work right?
Yeah. Yeah.
6'3" and 225 is a lot different, I assume, than 5'9" and 207. So, I mean, I guess I can ask Ned Beatty, but anyway. Nobody's doing any math in their head over that. So Luthor's big plan, of course, is real estate scam, but he's going to use nuclear missiles to make it work. It just so happens that the Army and Navy are going to test the same rocket, and they're going to have it go in two different directions, and I think they were just going to control it, do whatever it's supposed to do, right? My guess is that it was meant to just land in the ocean on both sides.
Whatever. They had a pre-programmed trajectory. Yeah.
Right, and they had a plan. It's all the stuff that we don't want other countries to do. But anyway, so Lex is going to hijack it by changing the coordinates of where they're supposed to be going. So he has Miss Tessmacher lay on the road
And get sexually assaulted by a general.
by Larry Hagman. Is Larry Hagman in a bit part? By the way, also Cliff Clavin's in both of these movies.
Yes, he is.
He's in both 1 and 2.
Yep.
Anyway, so they also, I think, wasn't John Travolta one of the army guys too?
That I'm not sure.
I didn't
I think he had a cameo, or I think he was. I think he's one of the soldiers. But anyway, so they, so Ned Beatty, Otis is going to go reprogram it while Gene Hackman shows up with an ambulance to take Tessmacher away. And when they get back into when they're all three in the ambulance, there are two things in this that just crack me up. First, he wants to double check what Otis has done. And he says, it's not that I don't trust you. I don't trust you. Well, so he asked him what he typed in. Of course, he fucked up.
Well, I mean, he gave the most important job to the
dumbest person.
Yeah,
right?
like what's he thinking? That's his bad leadership. Yeah.
But so he starts to threaten Otis physically with, it's like, you want to see a long arm? Because he says, well, I guess my arm wasn't long enough to write in all the coordinates. And the whole time that he's threatening, I never noticed this before, but Eve Tessmacher is like clapping and cheering him on, like beat the shit out of this idiot. And she's like so giddy over Lex like abusing Otis. It's hilarious. It's total Keystone Cops sort of thing, like the bad guys are kind of stupid always. Yeah. I mean, no matter how smart the leader is, they're always going to be stupid. They're always going to do stupid things. But so then they have to go back and they have to cause another instance to where they basically block the road long enough for Eve Tessmacher this time to make the changes properly. She probably should have just gone the first time, but then again, you kind of needed her boobs the first time. So what are you going to do, right? You needed her boobs and her disco wig and her red dress. So that's when basically now Lex is ready to spring the trap onto Superman to basically get him out of the picture so that he can then, when the rockets fire off, they'll do what he wants them to do. By the way, do you guys, it's one of my favorite like funny places, but you guys remember where they get the kryptonite from? The name of the place?
Oh, I didn't write it down either.
I didn't have to write it down. I always remember it. It's Addis Ababa.
Oh yeah.
That's like up there with Cucamonga, or whatever. Yeah, Addis Ababa. Anyway, so they got the kryptonite, and they're going to basically kill Superman so that they can go and just in case Superman isn't hurt by the kryptonite. He sends one to the intended location of the San Andreas Fault, and a second one
to Hackensack, New
Jersey. Just randomly Hackensack, New Jersey, which randomly Eve Tessmacher's family lives.
Yeah, which randomly is the whole reason that
he gets out.
His plot fails. Yeah.
Yes. And the whole thing is that because if Superman isn't affected, he can't stop both missiles. His speed isn't going to be enough to stop them both. So, Miss Tessmacher gets Superman out, and he had already said at one point that he doesn't lie. So she basically makes him say, if I let you out, you gotta stop the one going to New Jersey first, which it's possible her kissing him and him's like, hey, why'd you do that? Probably means that Lois Lane died.
Yeah,
he hung out just a little bit too long there.
Just a little bit too long.
He was not moving fast enough at all.
Yeah, he did not leave fast enough, right?
No.
So then so he has to stop the one going to New Jersey first, but by the time he gets back to the West Coast, it's already hit.
Yeah.
And now he has to clean up the mess as opposed to
him like lifting up the Earth's mantle to like repair
put it back
to
together.
repair the fault is hilarious. It's like, goddamn.
Yeah, hey man, it's Superman, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It looks pretty good. I mean, I like the reverse effect of that.
I always liked seeing him like burrowing through like the core, like, you know, where it's all red and lava-y, you know, and he's like, you know, just kind of burrowing through that.
A lot of these effects actually look pretty good. The Golden Gate looks pretty good.
Yes.
The Hoover Dam looks pretty good. The flooded town though looks like shit.
Because it was somebody else. Derek
Really?
Meddings,
Oh, it looks bad.
Derek Meddings had to leave to go work on Moonraker, so he had to leave.
That explains a lot because it does not look very good.
Right. Actually, it was either Moonraker or Spy Who Loved Me he had to leave for, but he had to leave and they had to just find somebody. And the after the dam collapses, because that was Derek Meddings, after that, all of that was the replacement person, and it looks obviously bad. You know, when he fixes the track so that the train can run over, that's like always one of my favorite parts. It's like, that's Superman shit.
That's
right there.
very Superman-y, but that's not how trains work.
Well, no, but Superman is not how people work. So, okay, you're going to accept Superman. You're going to suspend your fucking disbelief enough for an alien to come down.
I just imagine, though, like his body, like creating like an artificial rail that it can still stay on, you know?
Okay, well, if you want that, go watch the fucking Plastic Man movie.
Right, that would be more realistic, though. Like, he would form a literal rail that would keep the train on track. Yeah.
Go watch the Plastic Man movie. And so at that point, like, he's got to put everything back together, but in doing so, he kind of forgets about Lois a little bit, and he's can't get to her in time, and so she's dead. She dies. End of movie.
She dies.
End of movie. The movie's over. Yep.
So sad.
This part annoys me a little bit because you had the good stuff early where, you know, Soup's dad said, you know, Jor-El said, you can never mess with the history of the planet. And his other dad had said something like, you were sent here for a reason.
It's a little conflicting.
It's a little conflicting, but and maybe this is just the movies of that time. The way that they're playing that over him flying around is just annoying.
Yeah, that's just,
he's having that inner conflict at that moment.
Well, anyway. I think that that's being more played for the kids watching, I think.
Maybe.
Because that was 2.5 hours ago.
I don't honestly love the turning back time plot device anyway.
Right.
I don't really.
It's a very okay. So
even as a kid, I always kind of rolled my eyes at that.
Yeah, it's like turning the Earth around is just going to destroy it. It's not going to make us go back in time.
Right. I was like, you just pretty much killed everyone on the planet. Dude.
Yeah. Oh, it'd be great if people started like flying off. Like,
yeah.
No, that's a very Silver Age Superman thing where like it was, and that's kind of, there is at least during that time, there was still a recent memory of Superman constantly having kind of Deus Ex Machina kind of conclusions to problems.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, with somebody as powerful as Superman, you're going to get into a situation where he can't solve like if you have to heighten the villains, then you also have to heighten him to be able to defeat the villains. It's not.
Well, it's always been a problem with Superman.
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
Sure. And
it's finding situations that match his powers that create conflict. Yeah.
Right.
That's one of the reasons I don't or didn't love Superman overall as a superhero is because he's infallible.
Right. And that's why I think that also Superman is a better idea than he is
invulnerable. But yeah.
Right. But yeah, he's a better idea than he is an actual living, working character within a story concept.
Yeah.
But so he turns back Earth. Now, this was actually meant to be the conclusion to Superman 2.
Right.
Superman 1, because of the escalating costs, and Richard Donner was not getting along with the Salkinds and Pierre Spengler. Pierre Spengler is kind of an interesting wild card in this whole thing because he worked a lot with the Salkinds, but he was not a very well-liked person. I think almost every actor had a problem with him at one point or another. And Dick Donner at one point even said that
Donner.
That's what everybody calls him, so I'm calling him that. Dick Donner at one point said, if I actually see Pierre Spengler, I will kill him on the spot. Like, that's how much he hated him.
Wow.
And the fact is that the reason why he was replaced for the remainder of Superman 2, like, he shot like 75% of Superman 2, and he does not get credit for it.
Yeah.
But he said, I'm not coming back if Pierre Spengler's there. I just can't do it. I can't work for him. So they said, well, okay, see you later. We're gonna go with the guy who made our Musketeers movies. Now, he did have Richard Lester was brought in as a line producer for the first movie to be the go-between, because Donner and Lester like each other and they could work together. But Lester had a relationship with the producers.
But it also seemed like Lester was there in case he needed to step in at any moment. So that was, I think, a little bit contentious for Donner, even though he might have liked Lester personally. It
was a little bit
created
of a
more animosity. Yeah, because he knew everyone knew what Lester was there for.
Right. Now, and Lester did, I think, mostly stay out of the way. And it's like, Donner's going to do his thing, but yeah, I am here as a backup plan.
I'm curious how much of the budget, because the Superman says it's a $55 million budget, and Superman 2 says it was a $54 million budget, but I wonder how much of those two budgets overlap. I wonder if it was really $110 million to produce both, or if it was a lot less.
I think it was a little bit less, but there were a lot of reshoots done for Superman 2 to kind of wipe out or clean up some of the Richard Donner stuff so that he wouldn't get credit.
Interesting.
And some scenes may actually be a little bit better under Lester in Superman 2. But that's just because of the timing in which they filmed things. Like, they were filming things for Superman 2 in the early stages of filming Superman 1.
Right.
But, you have people acting outside of their comfort zone with their characters at that point.
I think I always liked the fact that the villains from 2 are introduced at the very beginning of 1. I always thought that was cool. Even as a kid, I was like, man, that's just really neat. And you don't really see that a lot.
It also brings to, it adds in the Phantom Zone, which was a huge thing in the 50s and 60s for Superman. And there's actually a huge part of that with the Legion of Superheroes, too. With a particular character who had to be trapped in the Phantom Zone because he wasn't Kryptonian, but he had Kryptonian powers, except that lead would kill him. He couldn't see through it, but the problem was that he can't just be in the world because lead is out there. So they had to keep him in the Phantom Zone. So it was like a whole thing. Like, the Phantom Zone is a huge part of Superman lore. And it's a terrible, terrible place. But anyway, it's like you would be better off killing somebody or sentencing them to death instead of the Phantom Zone.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to float in a plate of glass for all of eternity. That would suck.
I always loved that. It's
great.
That. It's so great.
Well, and as soon as they're sucked up, because as soon as they're sucked up, what do they start doing? They plead for their release. Like, I
love them pressed up against the glass. It looks, it's very scary.
Yeah, and because up till that point, Zod's saying hey, I'm gonna get you motherfuckers, and then they sap him up into the Phantom Zone. He's like, oh, let me out of here. So yeah, I mean, it's a living hellscape. But anyway, so there were some Richard Donner also had said that he always thought that there was an issue with Lester and the Salkinds also because they never paid him for working on the two Musketeer movies.
That's bizarre.
And it's like, but I don't know if that's really like maybe they underpaid him or they never gave him a raise that they were going to or something. But I can't imagine that Richard Lester would make the rest of Superman 2 and a whole other movie if he wasn't getting paid.
Yeah.
That seems odd to me. But no, the Salkinds are really, really curious people because I think they thought they had more control over things than people would really ultimately give them credit. Like, Superman is a Richard Donner movie. It is not a Salkind movie, and I think they thought the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they thought, well, we hired everybody, so it's our, like they almost have that stage producer kind of mentality, right? Where they can make all of these changes and it becomes theirs as opposed to the directors or, something like that. But, but sometimes it takes great, what do they say? Art through diversity or through not diversity through what's the word I'm thinking?
Great art is made through adversity.
Adversity. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. No. It was I mean, it was a bad situation. It was a bad set. Or at least in the higher ups. Like Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder and Gene Hackman were just doing what they do. And I'm sure there were times where it's like, oh God, I hope they don't, I hope there's not a fight on set today, but.
Oh, I can't imagine. I mean, Reeve was probably the only actor who wasn't difficult. And maybe Ned Beatty. But Gene Hackman is just an absolute terror. I mean, I don't think anyone's ever said a good word about Gene Hackman.
Really?
I think, he's got a pretty bad reputation as far as.
And of course, Brando is just fucking bonkers.
This might have been during a time in which Margot Kidder was trying to stay clean too.
Oh yeah.
So she might have been better off than she had been in the past.
I'll be honest. I don't love Margot Kidder as Lois Lane.
Are you freaking kidding me? She's the only person. Like, there's not been a Lois Lane since that I think comes anywhere close to Margot Kidder.
I don't know. She's okay. I mean,
That's weird.
I don't know.
Okay.
That brings up speaking of Margot Kidder, that scene where she reads the poem.
Oh yeah.
Was apparently originally supposed to be a song.
Yeah, she was supposed to sing a song,
which
interesting.
Is pretty interesting to me.
I mean, I guess I should rephrase. Like, I like her as the very confident, kind of the reporter, the cocksure, sort of arrogant. I like how she plays that a lot. I don't like her as the romantic interest because I think that she just I don't buy it. I really don't. I don't really buy that Superman would fall for her. He's constantly telling her that she's not selfish, but she's fucking selfish, right? I don't think she's really that good a person. Is where I'm also kind of, and that's okay. I think I like that as Lois Lane a little bit. Who puts her career above all other things. And she's a woman in the 70s as a reporter, and she probably, does have to kind of be that put on that tough gal kind of persona. But I don't feel like she ever really melts emotionally. I think that I don't really buy it a whole lot. And if she does, then I don't really see that reconciling with her as the Lois Lane that I like, the sort of very confident Lois Lane.
I think, okay.
And I think we'll get. I want to get into this a little bit more in the second one.
Well, because that's where she does kind of melt.
She does, but she's there's a big problem I have with the second one that we'll talk about.
Okay. Okay. Maybe I will allow that. No, I don't. So yeah, there's also another thing. So in that scene, which he's running by the locomotive, and the little girl in the train is like watching him. Her parents are the first guy to play Superman. In the serials back before George Reeves. And Kirk Allen is his name. He was actually, I think, also the radio and the animated voice of Superman too. But anyway, and then Noelle Neal played the mother, and that was the first or the second Lois Lane. Technically, there was somebody before her, but that was their cameo in this. And of course, I think she has a cameo later in Superman Returns too. Actually, I think maybe both of them do. But anyway, that was supposed to be Lois Lane. There are some versions of that movie that keeps that line in, but the theatrical cut cuts it because they realize Margot Kidder looks too much older than Christopher Reeve, so nobody was going to buy it. That there isn't. Or at least not, if she doesn't look older than Christopher Reeve, she certainly does not look, 10 years younger than him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That it just wasn't going to work. Plus, he shows up at the Daily Planet at the age of 30. She would be 20. That
doesn't make sense.
Right. So they cut it, like they thought it would be a nice little wink, but they cut it. Mm-hmm. And it's probably for the best. So yeah, it's
that's just kind of silly.
Yeah. I mean, there are things that you can do that are not like, having Lana Lang there. They really stuck to a lot of the history of the Superman characters. But now, one thing about Christopher Reeve, now he did take the part like super, super seriously. Like he was really like invested and wanted to make sure that he was portraying the character properly. Supposedly, he maybe like it got to his head a little bit. There's some stories that have been told, but then again, the stories come from Jack O'Halloran, who has made a life out of telling tall tales, because his dad was like a mob boss or something, and he loves telling anybody who will listen his stories about, how he would set people right, like how he personally would set people right when they pissed him off on sets and stuff. And I don't think that's true. Right. Or at least I don't think it's as true as he puts it. As a very, very, very small bit actor in the 76 King Kong, I do not believe for a fucking second that he bossed around a production crew in order for the crew to have a cooler full of beers. That's another story he tells. I don't buy that for one fucking second. He was a boxer and a bit actor at best. and I don't want to be, I don't want to be a jerk to him, but at the same time, I don't buy it. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't doubt that Christopher Reeve had at times been a little bit full of himself as things were, really progressing, and certainly in the sequels. But I don't necessarily buy that he would have been a terrible person to work with. By all accounts, he really wasn't.
I'd never heard those stories. That's interesting.
Yeah, like he supposedly, I don't know, because that's the guy who plays Non, by the way. Mm-hmm. He supposedly had, backed him into a corner and told him how he would, how he was going to speak to him and all of that. And it's like, come on, dude. You'd get fucking fired in a second. Yeah, it's like nobody's going to push around the star of a movie.
Yeah, that's pretty weird.
Right. Yeah. But anyway,
or whatever, he pushes him around in 2, which we're going to talk about next week, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, we've got Superman 2.
Oh, did either of you realize that Superman leaves Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen in the desert at the end of 1?
Well, he's got to go arrest Lex Luthor before
but he just leaves them there. They have no gas.
He has to make his exit.
His
spectacular exit. But yeah,
it cracks me up. They're still in the desert.
Yep.
those final that final shot of him flying up into space and then like breaking the fourth wall to give us a little smile before he flies up. That's used in every single movie and recreated by Brandon Routh for Superman Returns.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's a nice little. I don't know. That's a nice little fuzzy feeling when he, like you get to go out on a little happy note there, I guess.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, this is a movie that, I still get chills watching a little bit, and again, a lot of that has to do with the music. There's a little bit Christopher Reeve was about as close as a real life, like for real hero for our generation. And even more so when we, had to see him in a wheelchair later in his life. So, there's a ton of emotion around this movie for me, at least.
I still like this movie a lot. I think this wasn't always the case, but I actually think I like it better than 2 now. And I really just like Christopher Reeve in this more than anything.
We keep doing the Christopher Lee thing.
Yeah,
Christopher Lee.
Yeah, Christopher Lee.
He plays a great Dracula.
And he's not a very good Superman, but he's a really good Dracula.
He's a really good Dracula. Yeah. I will watch this movie again specifically for those Clark Kent scenes because they're just so much fun.
Yep.
And I think Hackman is also just absolutely hilarious in this movie. His villain, his Lex Luthor, which I don't feel has enough to do in the second movie, has everything to do in this movie, and he relishes every scene.
Everybody making this movie knows exactly what they're making too.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty fascinating. But and they all took it seriously too. And
it's interesting too because the villain I think what I used to love about the second movie is why I liked it more than the first is because the villains, right, of the second movie, and that's still what I love about the second movie, don't get me wrong. But with the first movie, you don't have really any Superman and Lex Luthor are only in the same scene together twice.
Yeah.
Right? And the trap and then the end when he takes him to jail. So that always kind of bugged me about the first movie as a kid. It was like there's not really any he's not fighting the villain. Right? Who's the villain? I didn't think of Luthor as a strong villain. I really like him as the villain now, as an adult.
Well, because as an adult, we understand sometimes the villain's an idea, not a person to punch.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, Luthor would have no chance against Superman in any kind of altercation.
Right. So I like that there's this. I like the idea of Luthor as the villain, and Superman doesn't even know it. Right.
Yeah.
Like there's somebody who's working against him actively.
He's kind of like Mr. Glass from Unbreakable.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing also, like when I think about like what makes Captain America Winter Soldier so good is that he's fighting an idea that tears apart what he stands up for, not tears him apart, but tears up what he stands for, which is a very, very intangible thing to punch. And it's very hard when that idea is turned against you.
Well, it's absolutely right. And the fact that when Superman does show up to punch, he gets outsmarted by Luthor. And I love that. It's like, oh man, the villain just outsmarted Superman. And Superman is in a lot of trouble.
Because Superman
I also love the line by Luthor. It's open. Come on in.
Yeah, when he crashes through the door.
Yeah,
it's open.
Come on in.
Oh, one other thing I wanted to bring up real quick. We only, I think, just briefly touched upon this, but I just wanted to kind of go back to it real quick. I positively love the Smallville scenes.
Yeah.
I think the way that those are shot are some of the most gorgeous shots of middle America nothingness that, I mean, outside of this and maybe Dances with Wolves, I don't know of a movie shooting that type of location as well as those two movies. Mm-hmm. And it really grounds the movie. And it gives you that emotional edge that, yeah, you know what, this is a real drama. I mean, this is not just, it's not just a guy in a funny colored tights. It's a real movie with real feeling, with real things to consider. And when he has to leave the farm, that's a heartbreaking scene. It's like that lady just lost her husband, and now he's leaving too. But it's also a beautiful scene,
right?
Where she just asks him not to forget them, and that's also another era of Superman. You don't see them again, or you don't see, obviously Paul Kent's dead, but Martha Kent's not seen anymore after this, because at that time in the comics, even though he does mention he sends money back to her working but I think during that whole time, I think they were dead. I think both of them were dead.
That's Annette O'Toole as Lana Lang, right?
Not in the first one. In the third
not
one.
In the first one. Who is that?
I don't know.
I always see Annette O'Toole's face.
Yeah, it's real easy because of the third movie. Sure.
Yeah.
Because she Annette O'Toole is, when we get to the third one, she was into being, being in Superman. Like, she grew up reading Superman and Lois Lane comics, and she knew who Lana Lang was. Like, she was into it. And it really showed, because she's got a lot of life in that movie. Trying to look and see real quick here if it says who Lana Lang is.
I couldn't find anything.
I don't see it, but no, it's not Annette O'Toole. But yeah, she's pretty close.
She looks. I thought she looks very similar. I mean, they cast the way Lana Lang looks.
Yeah, redheaded girl.
Right.
All redheaded girls look the same, right?
Look, and they all look like Lana Lang.
Well, they all look like Annette O'Toole. Anyway, but yeah, so we're upwards and onwards. We will go into Superman 2 in 1 week's time.
Yes.
Good movie. I think it stands up for the most part. 42 years later.
I think so too.
So, all right. Well, until next week, when we face 3 dastardly Kryptonian criminals, I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Jason Oliver.
Oh, shit. I'm Chuck Moore. And
let's, you know what? Let's do it. I'm not editing this out, but we are going to do this again. So until next time, when we face off against 3 dastardly Kryptonians, I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Chuck Moore.
I'm Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.
Superman does whatever a super can. Flies real high in the sky, does some stuff, punches guys. Watch out, here comes a Superman.